The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power into creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I'm Ryan Kairalla, and it is a pleasure to have you here this week. I'm feeling joy right now, viewers and listeners. This time of year just makes me feel all the good feelings. Early to mid-February always delivers for me, because in this time of year, especially the week in which you're speaking to me now, it's always that time of year right when we finish off with the Grammys. And so I got my post-Grammys high, and I know the good times are still rolling, because what do I have coming up the next weekend? The Super Bowl. So for me, it's like two Super Bowls back to back, one weekend after another. I love early to mid-February and all of the good tidings it brings. So you caught me in a good mood, viewers and listeners. We got some cool stories to talk about. We're going to break down the Grammys quite a bit. We have an extraordinary guest coming up in the second segment. I'm so excited to bring to you Galen McCormick. She is the director of the Eastman Performing Arts Medicine Center at the University of Rochester, has dedicated her professional life to the interplay of music and medicine, the healing power of music, the power of music to promote better health outcomes, to make us happier, healthier, more fulfilled people. She's on the cutting edge of that research. And frankly, I tend to subscribe to the view that we have only begun to scratch the surface of what music is capable of in terms of its healing properties, in terms of its ability to fulfill our lives personally, psychologically, physiologically. It's an exciting field for me. I'm so interested in it, albeit as an amateur. I wouldn't call myself an expert in this field, but I think the stuff in it's really interesting, and I am so excited to get to talk to the people who are experts, who are on the cutting edge of this stuff, and are doing some really cool things with music. And we're going to get all of that in the second segment when we talk to Galen McCormick. So don't go anywhere for that. That's going to be a rip-roaring good time. I'm really, really thrilled for that. And also thrilled to bring with you our guest, our co-host this week. Always excited when she joins us. We are joined by Katie Zaccardi. Hi, Katie.
Hello, Ryan.
Katie, I know that this time of year is exciting for you for the same reason. I know you love your Grammys, and you just got to enjoy the Grammys. And I know that any Super Bowl where you're getting Taylor Swift and the Travis Kelce and that whole fun time like this, you must be feeling pretty good this time of year.
I mean, I have to admit, I'm surprised at how jovial you are right now in the month of February. I think everyone else is a February hater, and you are a February lover. So I love that about you.
I am going a little against the grain there. I'm with you.
You are. And especially after a long January, I think everyone's happy to be in February, but it's still winter.
I am thrilled to get out of January, believe me. But part of it is perhaps me being a South Floridian. The rest of the country is climate-wise pretty miserable right now. But February is a good time to be in South Florida, and perhaps that is contributing to my good mood.
Perhaps, indeed. It's not too cold here in Nashville, but I think being in Florida would be even nicer.
Katie, slightly off topic, but it's on the top of my mind now after talking to you in the pre-show. Sure. Are you knitting? Are you a knitting person? Did I see you knitting before we started this program?
You did, and fine, don't make me sing, or rather show my hat, but you know that SNL skit? Don't make me sing. I started knitting this year. This is the hat I'm working on. Everybody tell me it looks really good. I basically realized that I have a phone addiction. I am addicted to my phone. I'm addicted to TikTok, and I needed to do some things to not be that. So I did two things. I deleted the TikTok app before the ban. I have since re-downloaded it because I was afraid that when the ban happened that I wouldn't be able to download it anymore, which by the way, I was right. So now it is on my phone, but I put a 1 hour timer on it, even though that doesn't really work because the password is just 1 2 3 4. So if I want to keep watching, I just put the password in, keep watching. It's not that well controlled, but at least it tells me like, hey girl, like you've been on here for an hour, and then I have to make the executive decision to either get off or override that. And I don't override. I'm mindful of my TikTok scrolling, and I will say that knitting has helped. Like now, instead of watching TV and scrolling, which by the way is insane that we do that, or just scrolling, I'll just like put on TV or put on music and knit. And it's much easier on the brain than like the constant TikTok stream.
I like that you're trying to take steps to get away from the phone addiction and the TikTok addiction. I think that's quite healthy. I'm not convinced that knitting is the best path to get there because really I just see another source of TikTok content for you. I feel like knitting talk is something that's really going to take off, and like that's going to be your new niche on that channel, and you're going to be like, you know, the next Charlie D'Amelio of knitting.
I don't know. It's like you've caught me halfway because I will say that my whole TikTok feed is knitting. Like I'm like, I got to get off TikTok. And then I'm like, but I have to watch more knitting videos. Like I need more inspiration. I don't know if I'll start posting about my knitting just because I feel like you're right. That could open like a whole new can of worms. And I'm just not ready to be like a knitting influencer. And then it's my whole job. I can't do that. It could get bad. Last week I took a Benadryl, which I rarely take Benadryls. And I was having like a Benadryl dream where I was knitting, but like I knew I was asleep. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm sleep knitting. I'm not. And I'm like, I don't know what row I'm on. I'm not going to know what row I'm on when I wake up. So anyway, it's
this seems a lot healthier than just scrolling through TikTok.
Yeah, it's meant to reduce my stress, but I think if I let it get out of hand, it could become more stressful than I mean it to be. So we're trying to be like super chill about it.
Gotcha. Well, it sounds like you could be knitting while watching the Super Bowl and, you know, seeing your girl Taylor. Every time Travis Kelce catches a pass, they're going to probably cut to her, so you'll get to see her a lot during the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And, you and I, Katie, we've had a fabulous journey the last couple years with the Swelsey relationship and just chronicling it through football and getting to talk about it on this show. Like I am going to be sad when either that relationship ends or Kelce retires, whichever comes first. And then we don't have this special thing that you and I get to share.
Yeah. I mean, it is what brings us together. Because I'm not a huge football fan, but, you know, I guess if Taylor Swift's there or if anyone else is there, I'm slightly more interested. I'm also interested to see how it plays out this year. We don't really have time to get into the weeds of it, but Taylor Swift is under some heat right now with the whole, I don't know if you paid attention to this, but the whole Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni lawsuit, which Taylor Swift like is sort of slightly implicated in, and Travis Kelce is getting some heat on social media too. So I'm curious to see if like, is she there? Are they airing her a lot? Are they not? I think it'll be interesting. Is Blake Lively going to be there? She was there last year, but now there's mad drama.
I will say that I feel like when you and I first started covering this whole relationship and through the lens of football a couple of years ago, it was a lot simpler, right? Because it was just, our favorite artist and a great football player. And look, and she's so happy to be there. And look, she's so happy and he's so happy. And now like reality sets in and all the gossip sets in.
It's real. Yeah.
And Taylor Swift is doing the Blake Lively stuff. And, you know, Travis Kelce is in an interview saying that he's, happy that Donald Trump's coming, even though Donald Trump said some horrific things about his girlfriend on Twitter. Yep. I mean, good Lord. we don't have time to get into that. But, you know, it is complicating our ability to just purely enjoy this.
Yeah. I will be there like with my popcorn, but I can't say it's the same thing as last year where I'm like, aw, Taylor Swift looks so cute at the big game.
Oh, her lipstick matches the Chiefs colors.
Yeah. Now I'm like, did she know all that was going on in the It Ends With Us set?
Oh, why can't we just enjoy things purely? All right, Katie, before we bring in Gayla McCormick, I have to talk to you about a lot of Grammys stuff.
Yes.
I know that you and I read the same Hollywood Reporter column about Chappell Roan and her speech and how everybody on the internet is dunking on the guy who wrote this column. And we're going to talk all about this because like this is a wild story to me. But first, I just want to bring up the speech that Chappell Roan gave at the Grammys. Vogue magazine, this is when Chappell Roan won Best New Artist, you know, which by the way, not an easy feat. That Best New Artist category this year was freaking stacked. I mean, there were like 8 or 9 artists that in any other year they would have won easily. Yeah. But just this year, it was just nothing but heavy hitters, like top to bottom, just really, really. But she's the one who won it, and she gave, and she gave a really powerful speech that Vogue actually called, quote, the speech of the night, and said some pretty powerful things and gave some very strong commentary about the current state of the music industry and how it treats artists. Producer Lauren, do you have the quote here? I want to make sure I read this right. She says, quote, during the speech, she said, quote, I told myself that if I ever won a Grammy and got to stand up here before the most powerful people in music, I would demand that labels in the industry profiting millions of dollars off of artists would offer a livable wage in healthcare, especially to developing artists. I got signed so young. I got signed as a minor. When I got dropped, because she did get dropped by her label, I had 0 job experience under my belt. And like most people, I had quite a difficult time finding a job in the pandemic and could not afford health insurance. It was devastating to feel so committed to my art and feel so betrayed by the system and dehumanized. If my label had prioritized it, I could have been provided care for a company that I was giving everything to. Record labels need to treat their artists as valuable employees with a livable wage and health insurance and protection. What an undeniably bold thing to say, standing in front of a whole bunch of major label executives at the Grammys in front of millions of people. But I expect no less boldness from Chappell Roan. That's sort of the way she's been operating lately. And I was blown away by it, just like cheering at my television on Sunday, and thought it was a really, really cool thing to say with that very limited forum that she has and that short amount of time that she has. And frankly, Katie, I thought that when she gave that speech, all of the reaction was either going to be, you know, just pure applause like she's getting from me, or maybe there would be people out there who might quibble with some of her arguments and say that it's not a record label's place to provide health insurance or things like that. What I did not expect is the article that I saw in the Hollywood Reporter that actually former Break the Business co-host Metal Dave, I know the old school Break the Business fans will be happy to hear that name. Metal Dave actually sent me this story last night or a couple nights ago, and he was like flabbergasted by it. And frankly, I'm surprised. I'm a little upset that he scooped me on it, that I didn't see this thing first. But I read this article, Katie, and my jaw dropped because here we have the person who wrote this Hollywood Reporter article, and he decided to take a third track, which is, I guess, to critique Chappell Roan for even being an activist on this in the first place. The article was written by Jeff Rabin, who's somebody I really respect in this industry. He's been around for a long time. He was the former head until recently of the Clive Davis Institute at NYU. You and I, both NYU people, were probably a little bummed that this guy, worked with our college. But he writes an article in the Hollywood Reporter, and headline is "Chappell Grown: The Misguided Rhetoric of an Instant Industry Insider." And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and think that he didn't write that headline, right? A lot of times you write a editorial for a publication, they'll supply the headline that they think is going to inspire the most hate clicks.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened here, because I really, really sincerely hope that Jeff Rabin didn't actually decide to, headline his own editorial with Chapel Grown? Because if so, that sucks. But basically what he argues in this article is that, it's not a label's place to provide the, things like health insurance and to treat artists like employees, and anybody who sort of who advocates for that is naive. From the article, quote, "It seems Chapel Roan wants to turn labels into landlords, bosses, and insurance providers. Have you ever tried to get your expenses reimbursed from a major label? Yet somehow you want them in charge of healthcare claims? As if labels want next year's winner to shout them down as slumlords in front of 60 million viewers. The architect of such a system, Motown's trailblazing Berry Gordy, received his fair share of criticism for Hitsville's unprecedented success, but the artists were happy with their royalties and credits, right? Exactly." So many things make me just upset at this, right? There is a far cry between a label providing a little bit more support for their artists, like, I don't know, health insurance, and them being like Berry Gordy like slumlords that control every aspect of an artist's existence. And it's just such a brutal straw man argument that is just beneath this writer's intelligence, in my opinion. And it just distracts so much from what I think is just a basic message that we should all get behind, which is maybe labels should treat artists better. I was so upset by this.
Yeah. When you texted me the article and I literally responded, is this rage bait? Because a rage bait is something a lot of people on the internet will say, like, people will make TikToks being intentionally stupid or intentionally very wrong about something just to incite views and comments. And sincerely, that is what this article felt like. Either this guy knew he was being intentionally rage baity, or he was being like willfully naive and ignorant, because I just think it's so, like, it's a very privileged take that he has, almost, to be able to be like, oh, well, you want the labels to do this? Well, they're never going to do it. So you might as well shut up and never talk again and never be an activist for anything, because it's never going to happen for you. Like, okay, how does anything ever change or happen without statements like this, without gestures like this, without taking a stand like this? Like, maybe it's impractical for labels tomorrow to turn around and restructure the way they do things and immediately offer health insurance to the people that they have signed. But for her to get up there and say something is opening a door, it's opening a conversation, and it's standing up for a specific group of people who need a specific group of things.
That's an excellent point in all this. And it does get me to something that he mentions later in the article, right? Because he does sort of say that giving a speech at the Grammys is too little. It's not actually going to do anything. He says
that's the part that enrages me the most.
Oh yeah. Like he says, let me see if I can find a good quote here that I think really nails it down. Quote, Roan's call for record labels to pay a livable wage and provide health care was noble, but also wildly misinformed. Her rise to stardom, fueled by viral moments, major label backing, and an industry desperate for the next alternative pop starlet, proves that she's no longer a struggling artist. She should do something about it rather than just talk at it, right? As if, by the way, giving a speech in front of the music industry, in front of millions of people, isn't itself really powerful activism.
Yeah.
She did more in a 30-second speech than I've done in 10 years hosting this podcast by saying those things in front of those people. And like, what does he expect her to do? Like, while she's giving that speech, like, should she be filling out 501c3 applications to start like a organization to advocate for this? Like, this might be the beginning of her activism in this space. That's
what I'm wondering. She should do something instead. She is doing something. Yeah. What on earth else do you want her to do besides get this ball rolling and again start the conversation? She is one person, and to also the audacity to say, like, well, she just won Best New Artist, so therefore, like, she is too privileged. This is what I'm inferring of, like, she is too privileged to even ask for this because now she's big and famous and rich. Like, take a step back, get some perspective. This is someone who is just up and coming and just entering a phase of success. And she, instead of milking it all for herself and being egotistical and whatever else you could call her or expect from someone in this position, she is taking at every turn, sticking up for the LGBTQ community, sticking up for the rights of artists at every turn. And then people have the audacity to say she's not doing enough. Well, guess what? She is doing like 150 times more than basically every other artist who was at the Grammys. So it just really enrages me that anyone would feel the need to publish something like this. But I've also seen it on the internet too, where some people are like, she didn't say the right thing, or she should be doing more, when she is doing the most out of so many of her peers. And I just think it's really unfortunate because it starts to set a precedent once you start shaming people for stuff like that, that is going to make no one want to speak up, because it makes it basically that if you start speaking up, people expect you to always be speaking up in the perfect way and always be saying something about XYZ that's going on. And if you don't get it right, then you're not doing enough. Meanwhile, there's plenty of artists who are not saying a word about anything. They're not being activists. And quite frankly, that's fine. I don't think that you have to be an activist as a musician if you don't want to be. But it's very, very unfortunate when we start to reprimand artists who are trying to speak up about things for not doing enough. It's not going to be a good road if we allow that to keep happening.
And I expected better from somebody who spent so long as a higher education administrator. Like, this person's job for many years was to bring out the best in young people, i.e. the students at NYU. And I think it's troubling for somebody in that role to be so harshly critical about any young person who's trying to be an activist, who's trying to find your voice. Your job in higher ed is to help people find that voice, to encourage people to find that voice, not to strike them down, not to quibble with the way that they did something if it was only 90% the way you'd like them to, as opposed to 100%. I mean, that's very surprising to me, you know, as somebody who's worked in higher ed as long as I have, to hear a higher ed person talk to a young person that way about what is a very courageous act of activism. Let me just quickly note one other thing, kind of putting on my entertainment lawyer hat here, because I think one aspect of this discussion that gets lost in the minutia of it is this idea of recording artists as employees versus independent contractors. And what I think Jeff is sort of arguing in this article, reading between the lines, is labels shouldn't be offering health insurance because they're not employees. People who are signed to record deals, they're not W-2 employees. They are independent contractors. They're 1099s. And so it's not really appropriate. And the answer to that question on one hand is, one, you could absolutely put in the contract that the label provides health insurance. Yeah. And, that's not that big of a lift. And the second piece of this is, and, from a legal standpoint, as somebody who's, read just dozens of record deals and has advised clients on them, artists who are signed to a record deal are already employees in everything but name, in the sense that they already have to deal with all the crappy things about being an employee. Labels control your, day-to-day life. They have exclusivity over who you can record with, and they own everything that you create. They own your creative product. So if you are signed to a record deal, you already have all of the bad stuff of being employees. What you don't have are any of the good things about being an employee. You don't get anti-discrimination protections. You don't get federal and state minimum wage laws protections. You don't get health insurance under the Affordable Care Act. And so all the people who say like, oh, we don't want to treat artists like employees, we're already treating artists like employees. All we're perhaps should be doing is maybe giving them some of the good stuff that employees get, and not just all of the bad stuff, which is what they get now. And that's at the root of what Chappell Roan was saying. Like, Chappell Roan was saying in the speech, she referred to herself as an employee of a record label. And while that's not legally the case, it's a distinction without a difference. She's dealing with all of the burdens of employment, and what she's asking for is, hey, can I get some of the perks too, like health insurance?
First of all, like, you articulating that just really sets in stone for me as well, how this is very on brand for her, in the sense that she has, we've talked about this before on the show, like, she sets boundaries. This is my work. This is my personal life. This artistry is my job. Like, you don't get to come up to me and be entitled to XYZ thing, because that's my job and I'm still a person. And I think this is just another way of her articulating that. And I think we honestly need a little bit more of that in this industry, a little bit of separation of, like, yeah, it is a job. And to just further your point, not only are artists employees, but they get the short end of the stick. Like, a lot of times you get an advance, you have to pay back your advance. So you have to just keep working until you have done that. Even if, like, let's say you have put your first album out and it's not necessarily making what you thought to pay back your advance, like, well, you better figure it out. Not to mention, to my knowledge, at least, I know a lot of artists, like, you're just given the sum of money. Okay, now you have to go write, record, produce, get this market. Like, there are certain budgets that might come out of the artist's own pocket to make that all happen, right? Of course, it depends on your deal and your label, but it's not just like, oh, hey, we got you. We're going to give you this money and it's going to be way more than enough. And you get to pocket it all and all your expenses are taken care of. You can just write it off, just charge it to the company card. Like, that is not what it's like. So I think a lot of young artists like her are just dropped into territory that they're not super familiar with. And then on top of all that, there's no job security. You truly can get dropped just like she did at any second. And so, yeah, do I know the solution to what she's proposing? No. Do I, like, know exactly how to make all that happen? No, not really. I'm sure there are major changes that would have to happen for artists to get health insurance, but I think it's a good start to at least explore this. And just like you said, hey, maybe artists can start just requesting it in their contract. Like, what if that happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the only way we can get to that is if somebody starts talking about it like she has.
And I honestly do, if I had my little, prediction hat on, I think that this will lead to meaningful change, or at least be the start of that, because you're already seeing discussion happen. So as much as Jeff Robbins saying, like, you're just shouting into the void, she's not. Like, there's a lot of chatter about this because of what she said. So it's already having a measurable impact, far more measurable than I've seen about on this topic in a long time. And I think in terms of a solution, Katie, I think the solution is going to be a little bit of everything. I think you're going to see SAG-AFTRA push for this even more, because right now a lot of artists can, under the SAG-AFTRA agreement, can qualify for health insurance through that union if they make enough money. SAG-AFTRA already has an arrangement with the 3 major labels to allow artists signed to those labels to have a measure of health insurance. Now, that doesn't do much for the vast majority of label artists who aren't affiliated with the big 3. Folks like the way Chappell Roan was early in her career. A lot of early career artists aren't making enough money to qualify for insurance under SAG-AFTRA. And so we need to see more from the union. We probably need to see more from Congress and get some laws passed to require this sort of thing. And I think we need to see public pressure on the labels. Nothing stops a record label from, like, announcing that going forward, all of our contracts are going to allow artists to get health insurance for a set number of years. And even if we drop them, they'll still get to keep it for a few extra months while they get back on their feet. Nothing stops a label from making that announcement and telling the world that this is something we care about. We care about our artists. We heard what Chappell Roan said loud and clear, and we're going to start doing the right thing. And when we start seeing those announcements, I don't know how somebody like Jeff Robin can say, well, that didn't, that didn't mean anything. All that was talk.
I feel like I could write a line by line rebuttal that's just like the inverse of everything he said in that article, and have the majority of people agree with me, because it's just so silly. Like, to say she's talking into the void, what are you talking about? No one on the Grammy stage got up and everyone, thank you, thank you, thank you. Boring, boring, boring. She was heard, like point blank, period. This
The
whole
only
article is
thing
very
the
silly.
only thing I regret about Chapel Roan's speech is that delightful hat that she was wearing on her head
Right
fell
off.
off right before she gave that really cool part of the speech. I wanted so bad for her to take the music industry to task while wearing that beautiful cone on her head. And it was the
Yeah.
only thing that would have made it perfect.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, a really wonderful, powerful statement from Chapel Roan. And frankly, from her, I expect nothing less. All right, let us take a quick break, Katie. We're going to be joined by Galen McCormick. I'm really excited for this chat. This is going to be really, really great. Don't go anywhere, everybody. Keep checking out Break the Business. Break the Business is presented in cooperation with Ryan Kairalla, PA. Ryan Kairalla, PA is a law firm providing transactional entertainment legal services, including contracts, business formation, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Ryan Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida. rkpalaw.com.
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show. Oh my goodness. I just saw this other line in the Hollywood Reporter editorial about Chapel Roan's speech that just gets my blood boiling. He writes, should artists have better healthcare options? Absolutely. Sounds like a union thing to me, suggesting that, hey, if you don't like this stuff, artists, like form a union and fight against it. Except again, they're not employees. They can't just form a union against record labels because that's illegal. Like, it almost sounds like they should get more employment protections. Unbelievable. All right, welcome back to Break the Business, everybody. Ryan Kairalla here with Katie Zaccardi. Very much enjoying that beautiful period of time between our post-Grammy glow and our pre-Super Bowl happiness. It's a good time to be us right now, and it's a good time to share all of this with you and to just completely fall in love with the things that we're talking about and with Katie Zaccardi's knitting. Katie, can we start, if you're going to really get into this knitting thing, can we like do something where every time you come on, you have like a new knitting thing to show us? Like, I thought that hat was really cool. I don't know if you got any other things that you can do.
Well, I did make a scarf and I'm going to make a sweater next. So I don't have any promises that it will be done by the time I'm here next, although that's 4 weeks from now. So like, hopefully, but at the very least, I will show you my progress.
That's what we want. You know, we're all, it's more about, you know, falling in love with the progress than just achieving results around here. We just, you know, we want to see people take steps forward. On that related note, can we see your cool hat again?
Sure.
Producer Lauren, can we get a close up on the hat? Like people, like, you know,
It looks, okay. So this is ribbing
yeah.
and then this is a different kind of stitch. So it will fold over like a really cool hat. And I'm not a hat person, but like, I think I kind of slayed this.
Yeah, that kind of works. I think that works well with you. I mean, right now it's kind of like a neck warmer because the top's not fully done.
Yeah, I guess I could just like, no, it doesn't fit. I can't get it over my head. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Cut that from the post. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, let's get into our interview. Let's go ahead and bring out our guest this week.
In white coats, they're finding new ways to soothe the soul. Notes and beats unbinding, making broken hearts whole. joins the two, where science and art both new. In her voice, the truth will use. She'll show us what it can do.
Our guest this week is a classical musician and the director of the Eastman Performing Arts Medicine Center at the University of Rochester, an organization that aims to leverage the potential of the performing arts in the healthcare environment, while also supporting the medical needs of artists. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting urmc.rochester.edu/Eastman-performance-medicine. We are happy to welcome Galen McCormick on To Break the Business. Hi, Galen.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening. I am so thrilled for this interview. I don't know if you heard me talking in the first segment, but I am unusually fascinated with the potential of music in the healthcare space. I think there's so much research to be done here. We've only scratched the surface of what this area of music could possibly accomplish, and you must be equally excited, if not more excited, about what you get to do every day, because you must know the potential of this field.
I mean, the potential is really limitless. And we, like you said, we are just starting to scratch the surface, which kind of blows my mind. Music and medicine have been together for thousands of years, but the research and really truly understanding it is it's just starting.
And you are such a really excellent ambassador for us learning more about this. I want to talk a little bit about your journey through music, Galen, because it's utterly fascinating. So to update the viewers and listeners, you spent over 2 years performing with the Rochester Philharmonic. And during that tenure, you were diagnosed with Meniere's disease, which eventually took your hearing. And your story reminds me a lot of another Break the Business guest we had on the show several years ago named Mandy Harvey. Mandy is a jazz musician who lost her hearing when she was about 18 years old, but has since gone on to have a very successful music career in jazz. Her music is incredible. And in both of your cases, Galen, I'm just blown away by how you losing your hearing did not take you away from music, which would seem to be the more likely scenario, but instead has caused you to embrace music even more and find ways to be fulfilled by music's healing power and to find great success in this field. Can you speak to this journey and the pivots that you made? Because I'm blown away by it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be really happy to. I was with the Philharmonic, like you said, for over 20 years, and I really love being a classical musician. I love being an orchestra player. I love being part of the team. But when your life changes like that, when you don't have a choice about it, you really have to come to some really hard decisions about what the art form means to you. And I just went through this period. So like Mandy, I actually went completely deaf for a while. Meniere's can be kind of squirrely like that. Sometimes your hearing comes back up, sometimes it stays down. So there was about a year when I was completely deaf and I wasn't obviously playing at that point with the orchestra because, matching pitch was not good. And I really had to just ask myself, like, I know this is overused, but what is this one wild and precious life of mine meant to be used for? And I thought, like, you would think, right? Like, it's not music now, but I felt so deeply sad and like deeply down every time I thought that way that one day I was just kind of like taking a walk and thinking, okay, like, what if I just somehow stayed in music and my whole body just felt alive? I thought, okay, that's weird. I don't know how I'm going to do that. And I think the biggest thing that happened at one point is that I was teaching young players, like high school and middle school age players. And I said, no, I'm completely deaf. And I had texted them and said, would you be willing to try an experiment? Could we try having lessons and just see if I can keep teaching you? And like, no harm. If it's not working, we'll just stop. And I was really surprised that not only did it work fine, I couldn't hear anything, but I could see them, right? And you can see my bass back there. It's a huge instrument, so it's very visual. And I could still mentor them. And it just made me so happy to see them improving and to still have these kind of relationships that really only music can create between people. So it was at that moment, I think, that I started to say, okay, there's something here. Is it teaching? What is it going to be? And my therapist actually said, well, why don't you consider playing your instrument in the hospital? I was like, are you joking? Who's going to want to come into the hospital and see a bass player, a deaf bass player, no less? He's like, well, you play fine, probably, right? So yeah, I probably play fine. So I started volunteering because I really did miss playing as well. And that, I have to say, the very first time I went into play, you might think like, well, you're just over in the corner and everybody's walking by and no one's paying attention to you. But I was more nervous than any audition I ever took. The day I walked into the hospital with my bass, and I started playing and someone sat down next to me and she got out her cell phone and she talked on her phone right next to me for the whole hour that I played. And I was like, like I'm trying to give a gift here. And then I was driving home thinking about it and I went, wait a minute, she could have sat anywhere and she chose to sit next to me. And like, it's not about me anymore, is it? I'm giving a gift. Yes, I'm giving a gift. I don't get to decide if it's loved or hated or whatever. And so over the next few weeks, I went every week and I suddenly realized that like I would not miss that volunteer shift for anything. Freezing, icy roads, no problem. I'm going in. I'm going to take my time. And I started really seeing the difference of what music meant as that relational tool to the people around me. I would see people coming in. This is the cancer center, by the way. And they're just deeply afraid. They're coming in for treatment. It's painful. It's long. It's lonely. And they would see me playing, and you could just see like their shoulders would come down and their face would relax. And I'd think, my God, this is better than anything I ever did on stage with the Philharmonic. To give that moment of comfort to someone, like that's it. So that was a huge turning point for me. But man, did I have to get my ego out of the way.
I have to say, it's so interesting. And again, we've just met, so I'm trying to like learn about you as we go here. But it's interesting the way I heard you talk about playing with the Rochester Philharmonic versus volunteering in the hospital. And I'm sure you have lots of fond memories of playing for the Philharmonic for 20 years, but you just sort of said, oh yeah, I played with the Rochester Philharmonic. Hearing you talk about playing in the hospital for, people who are going through these really difficult times in their life and seeing the way your eyes lit up 100 times more, like this seemed like this is the calling. And ironically, it sounds to me like you would not have found this calling or found this path in music had you not lost the thing that made you capable of hearing music in the first place.
I know, right? Isn't that weird? And I would say to people, like, we can talk about the career that I'm in now, but I would say as a deaf person who doesn't perform, I feel more seen and more heard now in my life than I ever used to. Just, yeah, it did take that change for this to happen.
On that note, can you tell us a little bit about the work that the Eastman School does? Because
oh my gosh, yes.
I'm so interested in this field.
Yes, I got so lucky. I was just coming back into the job market. I had gotten implanted. I have a cochlear implant, which really helps to kind of stabilize my hearing. And the dean of the Eastman School called me and said, I have this project we're thinking about. Would you come talk to me? And they had been working for years looking at another really excellent performing arts medicine program in Houston. And he said, we've been looking at this program. We've been looking at how we could do this here. And I think we're ready. We need a point person to help us launch it. And so what I've helped them build is based on the 4 pillars, which is a lot of programs, right, have a structure, these kind of pillars. And ours are, how can we influence healthcare for performing artists? So how can we get critical specialists in front of performing artists the way that any kind of athlete, when they're injured, immediately has, their trainer, they get right into a concussion specialist. It's the same thing if you're a violinist or a flutist and you're having tendonitis. You need to be seen immediately or your career is going to be totally derailed. And because this is happening at Eastman, we have the opportunity then to train the artist. How do you know what to look for? How do you know how to take care of your mental health and your physical health? So that was already a huge appeal. But wait, there's more. Then we started talking about how can we connect our School of Music with our hospital system, which happens to be within the University of Rochester. Well, that seems like kind of an easy, right, connect the way that I was playing in the lobby. And so I helped to work on a training program so that you don't just show up and play like all your etudes and scales or all your flashy, romantic concerto repertoire. We've got to really think about how we serve the people that are there. But the students are so up for it. They are so eager to contribute to the community and they want to know what is that way that is supportive. So it's not about them. I mean, I have to give them a ton of credit. They come into it so humbly and so differently than I did the first time I walked into the lobby. Then the third part of our program is creative arts therapy. So music therapy, art therapy, drama therapy. We had a small music therapy program, and I've really been charged with helping to grow that. So we are in that process. We work with children, but we also work with adults. And we're really looking at what are the ways this make an impact on your hospital stay? How could we help people so they can deal with the traumas that they're going through? And that can be making music, listening to music. But we go way down that rabbit hole. I should be careful. I'll spend the whole time. And the last pillar, we're an R1 research university. And so we're really doing that critical research on how music impacts health and well-being for all of us. And that's another, like, we can go deep on that one.
I am very interested in this area of research. Is there anything that you all are working on right now, or that you've come across in your research, that if you were at a cocktail party and you just needed to blow somebody away about the healing power of music and how it can create positive health outcomes in unexpected ways, what might you hit me with based on your research?
Oh my gosh. There's two things I always love to talk about. One is, we all know someone who's had a stroke and they're having trouble recovering their speech because of what's happened in their brain. So they can't quite get a word out. But if it's in a song, or if we teach it to them in a song, they can say it or they can sing it. And it's almost immediate. Same thing with Parkinson's. People with Parkinson's have like a sort of stuttery gait when they walk. If you put music on, it takes 2 beats and they're in and they can walk, and it bypasses something in the brain that, when I put videos on, it's just mind blowing, because you think, oh, maybe it'll take time. Maybe it's like exercise. It's immediate.
Oh my, that's okay. Yeah. That if we were at a cocktail party, that would have done the job. That would have blown me away.
One, okay.
That's so cool. See, that's the good stuff, Katie. That's the stuff where I'm like, I'm telling you, there's some real potential here in music to like change healthcare.
Well,
Absolutely.
Galen, I keep seeing on like TikTok and Instagram little videos or whatever that will say, listening to Mozart will reduce the growth of cancer cells and things like that. Like, how much of that is just clickbait versus how much of it is like, no, the power of music really is in some ways so simple that just listening to it or just singing it can make huge impacts.
It's yes and. I don't know about Mozart in particular, and I know people like to glom on to the Mozart effect.
Yeah.
You absolutely, if we talk about just singing, even if we're singing in our car, we're singing in the shower, you're actually creating a lot of really positive things. Endorphins, right? We all know that from people who run. I'm not one of those. But just in the cardiovascular of singing, we know that when people sing and commute like a choir together, their brain waves will synchronize, their heartbeat will synchronize. Like, it's pretty wild what happens. So I would say it's both and. Yeah, some things are clickbaity, but the underlying truth of it is we know that engaging with the arts is absolutely beneficial.
And do you guys do any work with like the nervous system? You mentioned earlier, like how helping artists take care of their mental health and things like that. So I'm curious more about that. I find that, I mean, I'm a singer. I just love to sing just for fun. But if I'm really stressed, if I drive around for 20 minutes and just belt out show tunes, it sincerely, like, I feel physically different afterwards, right? So what are some other things that are helpful for our nervous systems or for our mental health when it comes to music?
Okay, with the caveat that I'm not a doctor, right? I'm just a bass player, but I'll tell you what I've heard.
You know.
Well, so part of what's happening when you're singing, right, is you're deepening your breath. It's working on the diaphragm. So that in turn is actually really going to help the vagal system. I think I'm going to get that right. But it's going to help your nervous system to de-escalate. And so some of the things we all do naturally, like if you are going out for a run or you're going to exercise, you probably put music on that's going to boost your tempo and get your energy up. Similarly, I don't know about you, but if I'm going to meditate or do yoga, I'm going to have music that's pretty chill, pretty slow tempo, not very active. And your nervous system responds to that as well, right? And so that'll help calm your heart rate down. It'll help bring your energy down. It sounds woo-woo, but there's honest to God science behind all of that.
I'm pretty intrigued by the power of music and to help people with dementia. I swear I've brought this story up like 8 or 9 times on Break the Business now. The viewers and listeners are sick of it. But I remember when I was watching an episode of 60 Minutes and they were chronicling Tony Bennett at the end of his life and how, it was pretty clear that his memory was really starting to go there towards the end. And they were showing him trying to rehearse for his final performance. And Lady Gaga's in the room and they're trying to rehearse together. And he can't remember her. Like, this is Lady Gaga. He spent the last 10 years of his life basically just performing with her, could not recognize her. And then suddenly they get to like the big show and he's got the crowd in front of him and he hears the music playing and it's the old Tony again. Like, you can tell like his eyes are back into it. And Lady Gaga walks out on the stage and you just see him go, Lady Gaga!
I love
And
that.
it all just comes back because of the power of music. And I wish I could begin to know enough about how the brain works to know how that happened with Tony Bennett. But I'm sure your school is doing a lot of really cool research in this area.
Well, that's where we're headed with all of it. And this is what really blew my mind. I thought neuro research was so much farther ahead. So when I joined the field and I started reading about it, I thought, well, certainly if we know this about dementia, we must understand how the brain works. We're getting there. We're getting there, but that is where all the research is right now. And you may have seen some really interesting things come out where they put the head cap on with all the wires, and maybe you have a pianist who's playing and you can actually see like what parts of the brain are lighting up. And similarly, we've been doing this where you put that on an audience member. Some of the same parts of the brain are lighting up and they're just listening. So we're really just starting to uncover like what's happening with music and what's happening with the relationship between listener and musician. It's fascinating.
I dig. I'm endlessly fascinated by this. For artists out there who are inspired by your story and are inspired by the story of the music students that you've brought in to work in this field, what advice would you give artists who want to bring their unique voice to support community health initiatives? How do you get started?
I say there's two things. And the first one is just probably from my own story is, first of all, think about what it is you want to do. Make sure it's not really about you getting the recognition, because in this kind of work, it really isn't. It's always about that relationship. And the second thing I would say is think about where you can go to meet people where they are, right? A lot of the people I play for in the hospital, they never go to a Philharmonic concert. And I'm not saying classical is the only greatest music out there. You know, we bring in lots of different kinds of artists, but could you go to a nursing home? Could you go to some kind of incarcerated space? Could you go to a homeless shelter? Can you bring that gift to people and share it right where they are rather than asking them to come to you? And can you do it in a way that is simply a gift with nothing expected in return? And I bet everybody watching this can say yes, but you have to really think about that before you enter into it.
I mean, I would imagine that most of the people listening to this show right now want their eyes to light up the way that your eyes light up. They want to, they can, what you're expressing right now, like that good feeling is infectious. Like I imagine anybody who can play music is like, I want to do that. I want to feel that feeling that Galen McCormick is talking about, because who wouldn't? That's incredible. What's next for this program? Like, where do you see it going in 5 to 10 years? Like, what's the next big thing in this interplay between music and medicine that we should be looking out for?
I am so glad you asked me. I have two things I want to share. One is that we're about to hire a faculty member who's dedicated to research on music and medicine. So we've been doing research by pulling a little bit of time from neurology or from psychiatry. And so now we're going to have a person dedicated to really lead our research program. The other thing I'm really excited about is social prescribing, how we can help people with loneliness and isolation by literally prescribing the arts for them, which is really a win-win for our artists, for the patients who get involved in this, that you might be prescribed to go to a concert, a museum, take an art class, and then they follow up with you. You know, are you feeling better? We do some more psychoanalysis. We keep supplying the access to the art so it doesn't cost the patient anything. And we've already seen great outcomes in the UK where they've been doing this for years. I am so excited for this because it's going to give artists more opportunity to reach the community. It's going to give the opportunity to the community to really get more invested in the arts without such a barrier.
I love this. I love the idea of going to the arts being a form of medicine. Katie, we're going to go from a world where Chapel Roan is fighting for artists to get health insurance to a world where health insurance is going to cover me going to a Chapel Roan concert.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm fully on board with this. This is fantastic. I love social prescribing. I encourage our viewers and listeners to find out more about the work that Galen McCormick is doing. Go to urmc.rochester.edu and search for Eastman Performance Medicine. This is a really cool program. I'm excited about it, and I can't wait to see what you all do next. Galen, this has been a treat. All right, I beseech you, please come on our show more often. Just tell us more cool stories like this because they are so motivating and they put a smile on our face. Before we let you go, we got one last question for you. Do you have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
I do have one. It's a little out of the box, so forgive. I find people get really stuck at trying to think of what do other people want instead of really saying, what do I want? What is the impact I want to make? And sometimes that's a hard question to answer. So I found it helpful to flip it and say, what breaks your heart? And when I ask people that question, they usually stop for a second. They say something and say, well, that has nothing to do with music. I'm like, hang on, think about it. If that's the thing that breaks your heart, whatever it is, how do you want to impact that with your music? And suddenly, this new way of thinking for them opens up that may take them to the same venues they've been playing, but gives them a new purpose and an angle. So that's my advice.
I like that a lot because, I mean, that relates so much to just like the inherent human nature to want to fix things that are broken. And, you know, and it causes us to direct ourselves not towards just like what will selfishly make me happy, but what will be fulfilling by giving me a purpose. What's the problem I want to solve? And once you figure out what it is, now how can I use my musical gifts to find some way to attack that problem? That does sound like a great source, not just for professional fulfillment, but for happiness.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
oh my
powerful
gosh,
advice.
it's so nice to chat with you tonight. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
We had such a good time. We spent the whole first segment just like railing against the music industry and how mean they've been to Chapel Roan, that this was just such a welcome palate cleanser, Caitlin.
Yes.
And we really appreciate it. Our thanks to Galen McCormick and Katie Zaccardi. Thanks to producer Lauren. And thanks to all of you viewers and listeners for checking out Break the Business. Mwah, we love you, and we'll see you next week.